Word stewardship lately, and it's a word we hear frequently, quite often. And I kind of think, as I thinking about it, it kind of means probably different things depending on where you are in the process of things. And so, for an investor who's considering investing in our fund or any fund, stewardship comes long before they ever invest a dollar. As investors, we're called to be good stewards of what we've been entrusted with, the money and the capital we've entrusted with. And that means asking questions, doing the due diligence, understanding risk, and thinking long term. It takes a while, takes some time for that money to be accumulated to become a point of becoming an investor or investing in a certain fund. In this case, a passive investing opportunity. Also means for the investor not chasing every opportunity that comes along, because as I've talked before, there's a lot of noise out there with a lot of opportunities to invest your dollars. And part of that stewardship for the investor is knowing where the proper place is to invest that capital. The investors that I admire and respect the most are the ones that, don't make that emotional decision. They see there's a lot of investments for precious metals, which again, I invest in precious metals, but I'm not going to rush into something and invest in a precious metal type things without some, due diligence on the part of it. So it's not an emotional decision. It is captured as a very thoughtful decision. And, those investors understand that they have that stewardship obligation with their own money, and it requires patience. And then something interesting happens. And this part I was really thinking about is that stewardship doesn't end when that particular investor finds an opportunity. Here's what takes place. It's a transfer of stewardship. It's not just of capital, but it is a transfer of responsibility. That investor spent years building that capital. They've been protecting it, they've been growing it, they've been active on it. And then they make a decision to what I call move into the fourth quadrant, and that is entrust their money with somebody else on a passive basis. And that's a real big deal. Transferring that money to somebody else to take care of is a pretty big deal. And so what I like to say here, that's when my stewardship begins. When that investor decides to invest in our fund, stewardship doesn't stop. It changes hands. Not only does capital change hands, but stewardship changes hands. To me, it's like I have an analogy. It's like handing off baton in a relay race. An investor has hands off the baton. They've run their segment of the race, handed off, and even though their segment is over, they're still in the race. And I think that's an important, visual to kind of think about. And so it becomes my responsibility to evaluate opportunities carefully, to my responsibility to manage the risk, my responsibility to communicate honestly, and my responsibility to remember that behind every investment account is a person, a family, and basically a long time of work. So I've come to believe that stewardship is bigger than performance. It's about discipline, it's about accountability, it's about making decisions as though the capital was my own. Every dollar that somebody invests in our fund, I treat as if it's my money investing in the fund. And we do have and will have money in that fund. Because ultimately investors aren't just trusting me with their money. They're trusting me with years of effort, sacrifice, and their own financial planning. So that's why stewardship matters a lot to me. It begins with the investor. It becomes ultimately investors trusting me with their money. And when we both take responsibility seriously, good things tend to happen. It becomes passive income, peace of mind, and no more noise. Again, Cody Cox with Bridge City Factors. Thank you very much. It's a beautiful Friday, June 19th. Markets are closed today, but I want to wish you all a very happy weekend and happy investing.